All right, and we are live on Zoom. Stan the Fan, along with Ross Grimsley up top and down below. And he's below geographically as well as Boog Powell down in Key West, Florida. Boog, how's the weather down in Florida?
Well, today we had a halfway decent day, but it has been really hot down here. It hadn't even been worth going out in my boat. And if I don't go out in the boat, it's too hot.
You're not fishing, are you?
I don't like to go by myself anymore. I'm getting to the age where, years ago, if I fell overboard and I was 10 miles offshore, I might get back home. But if I fall overboard now, I don't know. I might get home and I might not, but I ain't taking a chance.
Yeah. I hear you. Hey, Boog, so I was thinking, obviously everybody wants to hear your thoughts on baseball, and we're going to get into baseball and talk about a long ago teammate of yours, Steve Dalkowski, who passed away the other day. But I wanted to ask you, I've never really gotten in, and you and I did a show together on the radio for about 4 summers in a row when Camden Yards first opened. But were you always into this cooking thing? I mean, did Jan, your late wife, did she ever cook, or were you always the cook in the family?
Yeah, we did a show for 4 years, and you didn't know that I am the chief cook and bottle washer? Come on, man.
I might have known it, but forgotten it.
Yeah, no, Jan used to cook early in my career, and one of my favorite meals back in the old days was chicken livers sauteed with wine. And I just adored them. And it seemed like every time I had a good day, by the time I got home, chicken livers were cooking. But there were many days when she met me at the front door with a martini and didn't say a word, just handed me the drink and went away, because it was not.
And you wouldn't ate anything then, would you?
That's right. That was not a good day. So anyway, yeah, I've always kind of enjoyed cooking. My mother passed away when I was 11 years old, and I don't know. I had 2 younger brothers, and a lot of the responsibilities of the family fell on me, and I cooked, little things, and my grandmother would come by every now and then, and she would help. And we had other people coming by, and I just sort of picked it up as time went on, and we were always outside, and we cooked outside a lot. So therefore, my love for barbecue.
You have 3 restaurants, correct?
Or not anymore.
Not anymore. No.
No, okay. Not anymore.
Are they doing anything at these restaurants now?
No, everything is totally shut down right now. We had a place on the boardwalk in Ocean City, and my son JW was running that, and we closed that down this year. It was my son's anyway. He did more of it than, and I was at the ballpark, and he was in Ocean City. So, it's a tough business. It really is. And he did it for like 16 years, and we finally shut it down this year. And we started doing spring training. Right. And we did spring training last year, and which was really successful. And this year was roaring. I mean, we were doing great, and then all of a sudden, all this other silliness happened.
Yeah. Now, if they open baseball again, and what they're talking about is, either Arizona or Florida, if they do that, and they do it at a spring training complex, will you be able to open that restaurant up again?
That's a good question. That would be something that we would have to talk to the Orioles about and talk to the concessionaire. It's an easy product to do once you get everything together, but it's not as simple as it looks, and it's not as easy as it looks, as we make it look sometimes. So I really don't have a good answer to that question. I just think that we'll have to wait and see. I'd love to do something.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sitting down here in Key West, Florida. I'm twiddling my thumbs, and I'm not doing anything in particular. And I go out of my house like 3 times a week, and I'm wearing a mask, and says, "Who is that mask man?"
Hey, Booker, so So getting back to how I get that you always cooked a lot. The product that opened in 1992 at Camden Yards was you obviously had the recipe for the rubs that you use on the meat, the beef, the turkey,
That's
the
right.
pork. How long was it that you were developing what became used as the key rub on all those sandwiches?
Well, we started in like November of that year, and that's when I reached an agreement with the Orioles.
So that would have been November of '91.
Yes.
The stadium opened April.
That's right.
'92.
That's right. It was, and we had a meeting at Ruth's Chris with the Orioles, with the Miller distributor, Bond Distributing, and Aramark, Hugh Gallagher, who was the president of Aramark at the time, and they said, "What's it going to take to get you to come to Baltimore, and we can do this food operation?" And I pulled a number off the top of my head, and it surprised me when they said, "Okay, we got a deal." And I was, "Well,
you probably should have. You probably should have shot higher.
Enough." Yeah. I said, "That's right. I didn't go high enough."
Yeah, exactly.
So anyway, I came to Baltimore and I started working with the executive chef from Aramark. His name was Russell Zeckley.
Okay.
And Russell and I worked every day on developing, products that I liked and products that I did. And we really decided, first of all, that you got to have pit beef in Baltimore.
Mm-hmm.
There's just no way that you're not going to do it. And I was raised in the South, and we didn't cook much beef in Florida, and I never cooked much beef in my, in doing what I did. And we messed around with it, and we finally came up with, of course, I'd already done the rub, and it just, we did it about 4 or 5 different ways, and finally it just all came down to the simplest, basic way. And then we did a pork tenderloin, and then that was the only 2 things that we had when we started, is pork tenderloin and pit beef, and we were overwhelmed.
Yeah.
It was a total success from day one, and I don't know if it was because of me. I suppose that maybe I had a little bit to do with it, being there and signing autographs every day and doing my thing and welcoming people into Camden Yards.
It was Boog, I think it was a perfect storm. You had the celebrity who you had been out of Baltimore for a while, but people knew you, and you had the persona from the Miller Lite commercials of being a fun guy, and then all of a sudden the ballpark was drawing the people, and you had the food, and it was just a marriage made in baseball heaven. It
just clicked, but the real thing is that the product was good. Davy Johnson came out there one day and said, "Hey, you could sell a dog meat sandwich and people would come buy it." I said, "Yeah, they might buy one, but they wouldn't come back."
Yeah,
It's
a great sandwich. It's a great.
Oh yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Hey, Ross,
we had people coming back every day and eating with us every day.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Hey, Ross, let's shift over to baseball. You and I were talking earlier before, about 5 o'clock, and we said you had something you observed about Boog's numbers, and you wanted to bring it up tonight.
Well, yeah, 17 years, 4 All-Star games, you hit now I don't know if you realize this. You hit 3 home runs in one game 3 times. That's second only to Eddie Murray. But 339 home runs, 303 with the Orioles. You struck out 125 times one year. That's
66.
The only time, that's the only time you ever struck out 100 times. You hit 2.
Yeah, I was playing I played with a broken finger, and I was playing. Denny McClain hit me and broke the ring finger on my left hand. And being a left-hand hitter, I could do without any other finger, just about. But that ring finger on your left hand, you just can't. You couldn't swing the bat. Yeah. And I, and I just felt like we were on a roll, and I was in a place in the lineup, and Frank Robinson was having a wonderful year, and I just didn't want to, and when I got hit, Denny McClain hit me. I think I had 33 home runs at the time, and Frank had 36, and I was right on his tail.
Yeah.
So Lord knows what would have happened, but I stayed in the lineup, and I did not like to strike out. If I struck out, and especially with runner in scoring position, I am not going to strike. You're going to have a hard time striking me out when those ducks are on the pond out there.
Well, 17 years, you strike out 100 times once.
One time. That's amazing.
That is amazing, because most people look at you as a big power hitter, a guy that does strike out. But I mean, in this day and age, guys, break 2 years, they broke records striking out, but striking out 100 times used to be kind of an embarrassment for the hitter. But now it's not really. Just tell the people kind of what your approach was to not striking out. And like you said, you wanted to. With a big power hitter, you put the ball in play. I mean, you had a 361 on base percentage as well. On
I was proud of that also. When I walked into the batter's box, I had some sort of an idea of what I was looking for and who was pitching, and I might just do a little bit of reckless abandon and just go up there and let it all hang out. Maybe on one swing.
Sure. And
maybe it all depends on who was pitching. Maybe 2 swings. But you weren't going to strike me out on that same swing that I took the first 2 times, because I was going to change my game plan just a little bit.
Yeah.
Because if I strike out, I'm not helping us do anything. And I sit and I watch our guys strike out and strike out and strike out. And the only thing that I can think that's positive about that is you're staying out of a double play.
Right.
And that's about it.
No, you look at some of the famous power hitters in the American League in the 70s. You got a guy like Gorman Thomas or something like that. Terrific ball player, but probably an on-base percentage right around 300, maybe even in the 290s, and striking out a ton of times. Your ability and plate discipline was almost unparalleled for a power hitter back in those days.
Yeah. I took a little pride in that. I didn't want to just strike out just for the sake of striking out. I didn't have that. Wasn't in my makeup, and I wanted to do something. If you put it in place somewhere, you got a chance of at least getting a base hit. Just hit it anywhere. And Lord knows how many of those hits I got, bailing out and one-handing it and whatever else I needed to do.
Whale.
Yeah, that's the way I would have been hitting against Ross Grimsley. No. I would have. My heart was in it, but my rear end was gone.
Let me tell you, you were 1 for 8 off of me. That one hit was a 2-run homer in Cleveland. Now, it was. I think it was the 8th inning. I looked this up. I said, I wonder what he did. He hit a home run. I don't remember that. And then I started looking.
You were tough.
You remember that?
It wasn't a picnic to face you when I went up there. I know that.
I'd slow ball in it down.
And you had no mercy on me.
No.
And I thought you were my friend, but you weren't my friend.
Hey, Booger, that is a pretty unbelievable. When he read that stat to me today, and I've looked at your stats many, many times, but like not remembering that you were the cook in the house, I had forgotten about that. That plate discipline's unbelievable. Is that something, if you think back on your totality of your childhood playing ball through your pro career, is that something that can be learned, or is that almost that plate discipline, the ability to know what you can hit, is that something you can teach yourself?
I think that I kind of taught myself when I started playing professional. When I went to Bluefield, West Virginia in '59, I went and I was 17 years old, and I'm just getting ready to turn 18. But anyway, I went, and here's Dean Chance and Arnie Thorson. These guys are all Cy Young Award winners. They're all throwing 100 miles an hour. And I just, all I could say is, what have I done? I've made a terrible mistake with this baseball thing. Oh, oh man. And everybody, now all of a sudden, after about 2 weeks, I finally had to turn the dial up. I had the dial on about 8, and I had to click it over to about 10. Then I started catching up with that fastball. Right. And then they went back to spinning it on me.
Yeah, Uncle Charlie.
You know, and making it sink and doing all this other tricks. So you have to be a student or you're not going to survive. And it's just like, you know, guys couldn't hit a curveball. And that was the thing that we used to say back in the minor leagues when they release a kid, and we would say, dear mom, your son is coming home tomorrow. Could not hit the hook.
Yeah.
Couldn't hit the hook.
Uncle Charlie.
Uncle Charles. That's
Charlie
right.
beat him up.
So one of the greatest things that ever happened to me is I had a manager in AAA, and Clyde King was the manager at Rochester, and I was doing okay, but he came up and he says, you know, he says the Orioles are after me to send you back to Little Rock, and which was AA, and I wasn't doing that good. And he says your biggest problem, he says, you're not hitting the curveball. So he took a big leather bag of baseballs, had about 75 baseballs in it. We were in Columbus, Ohio. And we went to the ballpark at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. We had a night game, and he threw nothing but curveballs, and he was a pretty good pitcher in his own right, and he had a decent curveball. And I hit curveballs for, I don't know, I hit 3 bags, 3 times 75. And when we finished, there was probably only about 30 balls left. So I'd hit a bunch of them out, and I felt like, and then that night, all of a sudden, my problems were over. And I started hitting the breaking ball, and then all of a sudden, all my year came together, and all of it started together. But you know, over the years, you change from at bat to at bat, from pitch to pitch. You know, because once the hitters see that you're on their stuff, they're probably not going to keep throwing that pitch.
Yeah.
So you have to be smart enough to recognize that too.
Well, obviously you were smart enough to recognize an awful lot of pitches, having a record like you had. Boog, you mentioned a couple of minutes ago, I thought we'd finish up tonight talking about the only Oriole that we know of that has passed away from the coronavirus at 80 years of age. You mentioned a couple of young pitchers that were throwing 100, and you mentioned Dean Chance and somebody else. I know Steve Barber was throwing hard. Bo Belinsky could throw hard. But Steve Dalkowski, who passed away the other day, tell us a little bit about your time with Stevie.
Well, the first time I ran into Dalco, we were doing a winter league down in Clearwater, and he had played the year, but he was in Bluefield in '58, the year before me. He was 1 year ahead of me, and he played in Stockton that year with Cal Sr. And Cal Sr. was the manager, and Cal Sr., I ran into him somewhere, and he says, wait till you see this guy, you know, and he wait till you see Dalco. So I got to see him, and he was unhittable. He had one pitch, he had a 100-mile-an-hour fastball, and then he had a 110-mile-an-hour fastball. And it was just boom. And it was, I don't even know how they caught it.
We'll talk more about him. I just have to tell you tonight, right before I came on here to tape this, I'm reading an article in Fangraphs, did an incredibly long article about Dalkowski, and it mentioned that Ted Williams batted against him one time in a batting practice setting, and Ted Williams stood in, watched him warm up, nodded his head. Dalkowski threw one pitch into the catcher's mitt. It was up around Williams' chin, and Williams put the bat down, walked out and said, I never saw the pitch. I
That's
never
right.
saw it. He goes, I've never seen anybody close to being as
No.
fast as this guy.
No, I challenged him one day, and I got in the batting cage, and he was throwing batting practice. And I got in the cage, and I said, okay, I want to see what you got, because I'm taking you deep. I says, all this stuff. And he cranked something up, and I started my stride, and the next time I saw the ball, it was rolling back out of the cage. It had hit the back and was rolling out of the cage. I did the same thing Ted Williams did. I put my bat down, and I walked out of the cage.
Well, but
And that was it.
He might have threw it out of the cage. He did
Oh.
that a few times, didn't he?
But, well, you know, one year in spring training, Frank Robinson was, and I think, who was the manager? Bertie Tebbetts. And
Yeah.
Dalco was pitching against Cincinnati in spring training. And he said that anybody that swings the bat against this guy is fined $100. And he got, and it was Frank Robinson and the next three hitters are the three hitters around Frank Robinson. They stood as far as they could away from the plate, and he threw 9 straight strikes right down the middle. Right down the middle. And that was it. But he told him, he says, anybody that swings the bat's fined $100.
That game was apparently the one that he talks about in this article, Jay Jaffe of StatCast. That was at Memorial Stadium, but it was an exhibition game.
Very, very possible.
Alex Grammas was one of the hitters.
I wasn't there when it happened.
Yeah.
How big
you know, I don't know if
tell people how big a guy. Well, he wasn't that big a guy, was he?
he was about 5'8", maybe.
Yeah.
5'9", maybe. But he had his arms, when he stood straight up, his fingertips were below his knees. And he had his arms were, it was like a whip.
Yeah.
And Paul Richards and Harry Burkeen and all the coaches and everybody else used to try to get him, when he wound up and when he threw the ball, to throw the ball in the ground, on the ground, in the dirt. He couldn't do it. He couldn't throw the ball and hit the ground 10 feet in front of him. And he'd just go like that, and the ball would just take off, just like that.
Boog, as legendary as he was as a performer with his speed and his inaccuracy, he was a legend off the field. And I know we live in different times than the 50s and 60s. We're a little bit more politically correct about having fun when a guy has an alcohol problem. But a couple of the stories you told me were just absolutely incredible. This article has one, and it said that he went to the bar with Belinsky and Barber, and they went off to the side, and he came back over, and he goes, "Look at this. This is a thing of beauty." And the bartender had lined up 24 scotch and sodas in a row, and he drank all 24 of them.
Wow. I never heard that story. But I've been with him, though. I've been with him a few times, and I've taken him home late at night more than once. And I told you the story about in Arizona.
Well, the great story, and look, again, we're sensitive to people that have drinking problems, but
yes.
We know that Dalkowski liked to drink. We know that Earl liked to drink, and we know that Cal Sr. liked to drink. And Boog Powell's never been that bashful about it. Tell us the one story about the time you were carrying him into the hotel at 4:45 in the morning.
Yeah, we were, Dalco and I had been to, and there was a couple other guys too that were there. We were at some place we used to like to go in Phoenix, and it was about, I don't know, it was 3:30 or so in the morning, and I volunteered to take him home, and I took him home, and he couldn't walk, so I threw him over my shoulder, and there were 2 entrances into the hotel. There was one over here on the right, there was one on the left, and I was coming in on the left, and I look up to the right, and here's Cal Ripken Sr., and Earl coming in the other way in the other entrance. So I didn't want them to see us. So I ducked down and I threw Dalco in the bush. And then I waited till they went on up and they got in their room. And I went over and I picked Dalco up and I'd thrown him in a rose bush.
You'd thrown him in a rose bush.
And it just tore him up. I mean, he was bleeding everywhere. He never did wake up. And I took him up to the room, and he had his roommate was I can't remember his name, but anyway, I said, here he is, clean him up. We got to be at the ballpark at 10 in the morning, and this was about 4 in the morning.
Oh.
And so show up at the ballpark, and he's in there with Ralph Salvon. Ralph Salvon was our trainer out there at that time. And Ralphie's trying to massage him and trying to get him going because he's pitching.
Right, he's pitching at 1 o'clock.
Yeah, he's pitching at 1 o'clock. Make a long story short, he pitched a 2-hitter that day.
Exactly.
He threw a 2-hitter at him, and everything was just one pitch, 100 right down the middle. Bang, 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 bang. And let's go home. Let's go to the bar.
Yeah. It calmed him down.
It calmed him down. That's right. His hands didn't shake at all.
Exactly.
Hey, Booger.
Right where he wanted to be, not too high.
That's right. That's right.
Booger,
I'll tell you what, I wouldn't. That's right.
Booger, you told me the other day, though, the story because he was this close to making it to the major leagues because of how incredibly dominant he could be. You were playing first base when he was pitching, I think it was against the Yankees in spring training.
Yeah, he was pitching against, I had played with him the winter before in Puerto Rico. We played together down in Mayaguez, Puerto Rico, and he kind of found himself. He just stopped trying to throw so hard, and he was still throwing in the upper 90s. But he was just popping the ball, just easy. And all of a sudden, and they thought he had the team made, and we were in spring training, and I'm playing first, and he's pitching to Maris, and I heard something click, and that was it. That was it. It was all over. He never couldn't pick his arm up. His arm just went limp, and I never saw him again until maybe about 10 years ago. He came to Camden Yards, and he didn't remember who I was, so that's okay.
Okay.
I got his autograph up, and he was in New Britain in a facility, I believe, up there. And
that's right.
He came out to the park, and I actually still got the baseball he signed for me. And that was one of the 2 stories that the people I heard. The first story when I got to Baltimore in '74 was Dalkowski and Dauber. I heard Dauber's story over in Japan, which we can't tell, but.
Yeah. Well, I don't think we can clean that one up.
No, we can't clean up.
I've been trying to figure out how to do it, and I just can't. We just can't do it. But that's the all-timer.
We can't do it tastefully.
No,
yeah.
like we are. Yeah. Right.
Hey, Ross, you're going to be doing these with me. We're going to be doing these. We're taping them on Mondays for Tuesday delivery. We really appreciate your time tonight, Boog, during this, pandemic.
Hey, listen, man. If I wasn't here talking to you, I'd be trying on a new mask or something. You know, you guys are wearing your mask, aren't you?
Oh,
yeah, I do when I'm out.
You can wear it into a bank without an ask for money.
That's right. That's right.
Boog Powell, many thanks. Stay safe out there. All right.
Same to you. Great.
Grims, we'll talk this week about hooking something up for next week. All right?
Yes, sir.
Hey, Bird, say hello to Bird for me, RG.
I'm right here, Pumpkin. I've been waiting.
Hey, Bird. Hey, sweetie.
I love you so. Hey, can we?
Love you too, baby.
Honey, can we come down and quarantine ourselves with you?
It's a shame to put a mask on that face.
What he said?
It's a shame to put a mask on that face.
No, it's a shame. You can't put a mask on that face.
No, sunshine. I told Ross, I said, when we really get down and out, we're going to go to and stay with Booger because he can take us.
Come on.
And the boot.
Come on.
Cooties can't get us.
He's ready for you right now. He's ready.
I ain't scared. Come on.
I know, honey. I love you, darling.
Love you too, sweetie.
We hope
You too,
everybody
RG.
that's watching has enjoyed this. Boog Powell, many thanks. Ross and Bert Grimsley, thank you. For all of us at Press Box, stay safe out there.
I love you, honey.
See you, Booger.
All right.
Steve.
Good to see you, Bo.
All right.